And also, rape is not the only type of sexual predation. There are laws against forced labor. But my father was having me do it 15 years of age, assuming that I'm Rain Man, and that if he forces me to hone my computer skills, that I'll be able to make him all sorts of money by hooking his porno lines to a website. I wasn't allowed to have a life. It was do what Dad says or take the abuse. Tell you you're a pussy. Call you all sorts of real mean fucking names. You're gonna do what my dad says or he's gonna fucking bully you. He's gonna let you know that he provides a roof over your head, so you're gonna take his fucking abuse. Those people have been opening and closing the doors for a while. I'm assuming that they got something important going on. They're probably trying to fix their car. They got their hazards on, so chances are pretty good that it's a broken car. It doesn't bother me as much as it would if I was trying to go to sleep. That's not what this video is about, is it? This video is about sexual exploitation of a minor. Now, some of y'all might want to pretend that this is something I'm making up because my daddy won't do what I want him to. Oh, poor me. No, 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 no. My dad's playing fucking head games, and he's playing them for a reason. What he doesn't understand is that story of him having me make porno sites for him, I've been telling that story since before I knew Natalie existed. It's on my YouTube. It's on my Facebook. It goes on my Facebook all the way back to 2012. Now, since I've been explaining that story since 2012, see, people keep telling me, well, why don't you go to your parents? Going all the way back to before I had a Facebook, before I had a MySpace, which I haven't checked that in probably a decade. I don't know if I could even get back into it. My dad had ideas of his own. He had these ideas of what I should be and what I should do. He never bothered to ask what I wanted to do. Whenever there was something that I was interested in and that I wanted to do, he wanted to tell me how stupid I was. How I should jump along and run along with some cockamamie plan that he has for making quick cash. Fucking stupid. I'm going to tell you about my youth. My dad couldn't stay off the cocaine. He was arrested for 38 counts of cocaine possession with intent to sell. That's because he sold a couple of baggies. He had them all individually packaged. Yeah, that's not for personal use. The story that he tells versus well, my Aunt Mary is recorded on this YouTube channel, speaking about what my dad went to prison for. Was I in the system because I was a bad kid? Or was I in the system because Dad couldn't stay off the cocaine? And Mom couldn't stay off the cocaine? What was my Aunt Mary's answer? Yes, I was locked up because my parents couldn't stay off the cocaine. No, it wasn't because I was a bad kid. My dad doesn't want to understand the way things work, but he wants to tell me how they work based off of his ignorant goddamn opinion. That don't help anybody. And then he wants to play it off like a 15-year-old boy really wants to be learning HTML for a fucking living. Like, this is really something that I am going to have a fucking interest in. No, I was a 15-year-old boy. Autistic or not, I'm still a 15-year-old boy at that point. There's stuff that I want to do. You know what? A lot of us who are autistic, we want to have social lives. But we're tired of being your fucking victims. When you do something fucked up, you want to blame us for it. Or you want to try to con and convince us, oh, you'll be our best friend. You'll be our best friend if we do this and if we do that. Oh, if we commit a crime for you, you'll be our friend. You'll like us more if we commit crimes for you. You're fucking stupid. You exploit the shit out of us. And then you want to tell us about all these man laws, right? The man laws. You got all these rules. You don't follow those rules. The guy who's cheating on his girlfriend, you know what? She's your friend and he knows it. So he gonna try to tell you about them man laws when he gets busted cheating. But also, he knows he been busted cheating and he's afraid you're gonna tell anyway. So he's gonna go tell her some fucked up story about how you're a horrible this, that, or the other. You already know that's how it fucking works. Or people are gonna threaten your life and then they're gonna fucking call the cops. I'm afraid of Sean. Well, what the fuck? Really? You're the one who broke the fucking law, moron. And now when you know that I'm trying to get you into court, you're gonna fucking pretend like I'm threatening your life? No, I threatened you with court, dumbass. These people intentionally misled the courts. They intentionally misled the public. They intentionally misled me. Now, with my dad, he's got a lot to fucking answer for. Sex crimes are not a fucking joke. Sexual exploitation of a minor is not a fucking joke. I was in the system because my parents couldn't stay off the cocaine, and I was a white boy in the system. And it was a juvenile system. And you can ask anybody who's been to prison and been in the juvenile system. The juvenile system is bad. It's nasty. You don't ever want to go. The most fucked up people you're ever going to meet in prison started off their lives in the juvenile system. You got staff members that know that they can do whatever they want to you. They got a lot of recourse if you try to tell on them, especially the doctors. Let me tell you how many of the doctors ever molested me. None. Not a single one of them fucking doctors ever did anything inappropriate to me. The doctors were not the problem. Not as far as the sexual exploitation went. No, that was the regular staff members. That was back in the 80s when, in order for it to be a mental hospital, and it had to be a mental hospital, we didn't have this behavioral health shit. The reason that we have the behavioral health crisis, we've got all of these facilities that have been downgraded from reputable places with all accredited staff, and even with all accredited staff, they didn't follow the laws, but we'll skip that part. It has gotten too expensive for a nurse to go to school to become a nurse. So we don't have enough nurses. We have an extreme nurse shortage. An extreme nurse shortage before COVID. Before we ever enter COVID into the mix. With my dad repeatedly being predatory towards me and me repeatedly being victimized. Me being told when I was abused by my dad at 15 years of age, being forced to learn HTML. Have you ever tried to learn HTML? This is the most god-awful, boring fucking bullshit on the planet. It's computer coding. Okay? This is not something that a 15-year-old boy in my position is going to have an interest in. I mean, this is when computers are first coming out, and I like video games, sure. Alexis Hink typed, "Why do you keep showing up in my recommended videos? Haha." Not haha, it's not funny. I don't know why I keep showing up in your recommended videos. Maybe you keep watching my videos. If you're offended by it, well, I'm not making it for offense to anybody like you. I don't know you. And if it offends you to hear it, you can find your way out. That's not me trying to be rude. That's me being blunt. That's an autistic trait. See, you guys don't get social cues. Those of us with Asperger's, there's many of us who do get social cues. We understand social cues better than you do. We make an intense study of it to try to figure out what the fuck is wrong with you people. We can't figure out why it is that you say one thing and do another. We can't understand why you talk about equality, but when it actually comes down to it, that's not what you believe in. You want the rules to be different for you than they are for everyone else. You have to have a victim class, and that is important too. Now, with my dad, he's exploited me financially before. This is not a new thing. He's held financial crap over my head. Lana Engeline, she's another control freak. She's done the same thing. She's promised to pay me to do things, long hours of manual labor, that she never intended to pay me for. I needed that money to make sure that I could pay my bills, and I didn't get to pay my bills because instead of paying me, Lana Engeline decided to give me musical instruments. Okay, well, now I'm going to lose all of my stuff. And, of course, I'm also going to be hit with a pretty hefty fine because I didn't pay stuff. Oh, yeah, and I did have a paying job for those days with the Jeffsons, but, of course, I didn't work those jobs with the Jeffsons because those women swore up and down they were going to pay me. They would make sure that I got paid. And then what did Amanda Engeline do? She wanted to flirt with the movers. Yeah, that was helpful. People have a history of exploiting me, and they think it's okay. They don't stop to think what it costs me for them to not help how they said they would, or to not pay me on time. Lana Engeline also liked to... She was my pot dealer, so when she wanted free labor out of me, and usually it was a bunch of it, instead of just asking me to do it, she would hijack my fucking pot and smoke it without me. So by the time I was done doing all of her chores, picking up the fucking dog shit out in the yard, and like that was a pain in the ass. I volunteered at the dog rescue. The dog rescue was run by Lana Engeline. It was called Give 'Em at a Home. I volunteered there for 2 years. And then I ran it for 2 years because they wanted to get rid of the house. Sammy and Shelley did. They wanted to move to Bozeman, Montana. I jumped through hoops to try to make that work. Lana Engeline swore up and down that she was going to send me money every month for the dogs. with her history of taking advantage of me, not paying me when she said that she would or what she said she would, her expecting me to do long periods of manual labor while she is not able to do it, and her daughter's not helping. And then Lanny and Gline, now that I've got a lot of the same issues that she does as far as my back goes, and a lot of other parts of my body too. She couldn't make the connection that I am disabled. I need help. Yes, I need nearly the same kind of help that she needs, but I've also got a lot of severe recent and ongoing abuse. Lanny Engline couldn't stop thinking about herself and talking about herself. And just like with my dad, she's got to have some way to control me. Something that she can hold over my head. Alexis Hink typed, "Nah, I was randomly YouTubing things to do in Chapel, and I think I clicked on one of your videos." Oh, you live in Chapel, Nebraska? Oh, Chapel, UK. Ah. No, ma'am, I'm in the United States of America. However, well, obviously, my accent is Midwestern Nebraskan. But I'm chameleon. If you stick me around people who are from the South, I'll pick up a Southern accent. If you stick me with a bunch of black folk from LA talking all sorts of fucking jive and shit like that, yeah, before too long, you won't be able to tell the difference. It's called chameleon. And a lot of us who grew up in the system in the United States, especially if we grew up in a lot of different places, we grew up with a lot of different people, and depending on who we're hanging out with and who we're hanging out with the most, we're going to pick up their accents, at least in part, and it's tough to get rid of it. A lot of people, when they go and try to learn another accent through immersion, like there's a few Hollywood actors that went to Ireland to learn the Irish accent, and they stayed there for like 6 months or longer and basically just talked until they were able to chameleon the accent. They still didn't do a great job of it, but a lot better than what I do. I just pretend one of the crappy accents. Kind of like when I do a Scottish accent, it's usually Fat Bastard or Shrek. Obviously, that's not how Scottish people sound. But the UK's got a lot of the same issues as far as how the homeless are treated and how autistic people are treated. In the UK, they did the right thing by disarming the police. That's what we need to do here in the United States. In the United States, the number one victims for the police, the people they murder the most, the number one on top of that list per capita is the homeless. With a population of only 500,000 people in 2019, the homeless accounted for 49% of those killed by police. Same year, population 120 times the size of the homeless. That would be the black population with 60 million people in 2019. Only accounted for 22% of those killed by police. And the majority of those black folks were homeless. What my dad chose to do repeatedly throughout my life to exploit my disabilities and then to use them against me as if I'm some sort of an animal because he doesn't want to understand. He just wants money. Now he just wants his name clean. He wants me to stop saying the things that I've been saying since 2012. That's one of the things that my dad is going to try playing on. He's going to try pretending that I'm making this up because he wouldn't do what I want him to. When in reality, this situation with Natalie Bollinger started well after I started telling this story. Well after the first time that I got on my YouTube, on my Facebook, and explained that my dad thought at 15 years of age that it was appropriate to force me to learn HTML so that I could make porno sites. After being in the system and having grown men shove their dicks up my asshole. After having people do, you want to call them unspeakable acts? No, I will tell you what those acts are. I'm autistic. That doesn't mean I'm retarded. I went to Lincoln High School in Tacoma, Washington. This is probably the toughest high school there is in the entire state. This is a high school that is 81% minority. All right? This is after growing up in the system, not just getting raped and abused and molested by staff members, but also by the other people I was locked up with. Other kids did those things to me. The first person to molest me in an institution was another child. Now then there's the priest thing. Everybody wants to talk about how horrible these priests are molesting kids. Let me tell you about Mount St. Vincent. I'm going to tell you how many times the priests there, or ever in my lifetime, have ever sexually molested me. 0. I have never been molested by a priest. Ever. I did have a priest encouraging other boys to beat on me in Mount St. Vincent's. He didn't encourage them to touch me sexually. He encouraged them to physically assault me, and they did. Alexis typed message retracted, and Bloody Nora tried being a Geordie living in Queens. I get mugged off for my accent left, right, and center. Well, I don't understand all of the regional terminology, but I think I get the gist of what you was trying to say. Anyway, my dad, he wants these things to come down. He wants these things down because, of course, his reputation. He cares what other people think. The fact that he wants me to take these things down, well, you know what? He was my predator, and I spoke up about it in 2012. I spoke up in 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017. All before Natalie was killed. I told that story about my father forcing me to learn HTML because he wanted me to hook up his 900 porno lines to a porno website. And you know what? He was absolutely right about that being an absolute moneymaker. But let me tell you another thing about growing up in the system. Just like with me, when I was abused by my dad and I tried to turn him in, I was given a choice between being locked up or staying with my abuser. The same thing happens to little girls when they try to tell on their daddy. And they tell that trusted adult like they're taught to, like they're told to in school. And that trusted adult doesn't do anything. Aren't these people supposed to do anything? Aren't they supposed to do something when I go to them, but they don't? So that little girl, she decides that she's going to scrape her wrist with a lady Bic. She's not even cutting herself. She's just scraping it. She doesn't really want to do it, but she knows that she's tried everything else to get heard and nobody's listening and she needs to be heard. But then she scratched herself with a lady Bic, so she's getting locked up for attempted suicide, and she's on suicide watch, and she's going to be put in the system, and she's going to be given drugs. She's going to be highly medicated. See, here's what happens when you do that. The cops show up, and they give you a choice between staying with your predator or being locked up. Most of the time at that point, your predator doesn't want you. What they want to do is they want to play the sympathy thing. Oh, I just want her to get help. I just want her to get help. We can't do anything with her. We've tried. We just want her to get help. You play like you're just trying to help them. You're just trying to help them. Oh, they're sick. They're ill. She's mentally ill. Obviously, she's cutting herself. See? That's a side of mental illness. She must be schizophrenic and she's telling delusional stories. No, that cutting on herself is a two-part system. The first part is Daddy couldn't keep his nasty cockbeaters to himself. The second part was Mommy wouldn't fucking listen. So then she cuts on herself and she's called mentally ill. And for the rest of her life, nobody is ever going to listen to her again. Anybody can victimize her anytime they want to after that. Because they know all they have to do is call her mentally ill and their crime goes away. People hate me for saying it like it is. Well, guess what? You can hate me all you want. That's not going to change the facts. Alexis Hink typed, you should just get a job as a recruiter. It's bloody easy AF. Get a job as a recruiter for what? And my head is completely fucked from what I've been going through. I can't function well enough to fill out a job application, let alone all of the paperwork that I got to fill out to try to turn in my predators. You should look up the name Natalie Bollinger. Alexis Hink. You should type the name Natalie Bollinger. When they talk about Sean Schwartz, I'm that guy. I'm not allowed to show my side. I'm not allowed to show my evidence. I show a lot of it on YouTube and Facebook, but nobody cares. They still make these things about Natalie Bollinger. She was shot in the head in 2017. They still make these sites about Natalie, and people still threaten me and harass me over it. The cops are still heartless son of a bitches. And all the places that I'm told to get help tell me it's not their job. Meanwhile, they showed that they lied by doing that job for others. My dad knew that I was autistic, so he tried to exploit me when I was 15. That wasn't the first or the last time that he tried to exploit me for money. Instead of helping me in 2019, instead of looking at evidence, all he cared about was Forex.com. This is a gambling site. It's called day trading. And he wanted me to do this Forex.com. Just wouldn't shut the fuck up about it. And you guys think that autistic people are bad. Jesus fucking Christ. You should listen to my dad tell you about Forex.com. Drive you to fucking drinking, I swear to God. Did you like that? Normally I swear to dog, but I swear to God this time. You actually believe in your God? Hell no. And I don't have to. I'm not required to. By the way, speaking of the UK, for Alexis Hink, did you know that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., there's a statue of him over the west entrance to Westminster Abbey? Slavery has been illegal in England since 1066. That's the first year that a British monarch was coronated at Westminster Abbey. And of course, every single British monarch since has been coronated at Westminster Abbey. Alexis Hink also typed, we also have a statue of Lincoln in Manchester. Very cool. I did not know that, but it makes perfect sense why. Even the Russians during the Russian Revolution wanted to speak, well, both of the Russian revolutions actually, they spoke very highly of Abraham Lincoln and his fight to end slavery. But the problem is that his death prevented that. There's a part of the 13th Amendment. This is the amendment that made slaves free in the United States. That's unless they are convicted of a crime. Now I want you to think about it for a moment. In the South, there were a bunch of anti-homeless laws that were enacted as soon as the South lost the war. They made a bunch of laws to make homelessness illegal. Now, what happened to all them slaves? They used to be property of other human beings on these other human beings' property. Well, now they're not allowed on the property. So, all these Southern slaves, 4 million of them, are now homeless at this point, and they're property of the state. Why? Because the 13th Amendment makes slavery legal if you are found guilty of a crime. That's an awful lot of incentive, especially for southern states with a shitty economy all fucked up as it is. That's a lot of incentive for those southern states to utilize those very same laws, that very same 13th Amendment that was supposed to make those slaves free, made them property of the state. They could be forced to work longer hours. They could be fed less. They could be paid less. Why? Because it's still slave labor. It's still legal in the United States. And these laws are still on the books, but they're not just on the books in the South anymore. They're on the books all the way across the United States. And then there's the Roman rental agreements. This keeps the poor people in a constant state of panic because they really don't have any rights as renters. If you don't own the property, you don't have any rights. You have rights sort of as a renter because you're in a place. Sort of. But if you don't have that, you have zero rights. Your rights as a human being don't exist if you don't have that roof over your head. And everything in America is more expensive if you don't have a roof over your head. And your expectations are greater. You're expected to achieve more. And you're expected to achieve it with less resources. And then there are people who are considered less than human beings, people like me, because I'm autistic. Because I am different, it's okay for people to victimize me. I must have chosen it. Let's see. Alexis Hink typed, freedom of slaves. Oversimplified, but the primary reason the northern states wanted to abolish slavery is because their industries were broadly merchandised, whilst the South were still heavily reliant on slavery. Well, that's kind of almost it, but no. The South, they had the opportunity for industry. Matter of fact, there was a great deal that was pushed towards getting the South industrialized. But the problem there is that even though the Constitution was written and the agreements that were made between the northern and southern states were intended to end slavery, the southern folks wanted to use the Bible, the way that slaves were supposed to be treated according to the Bible. Southern states wanted to use that as their excuse to maintain and keep slaves. The Civil War, and matter of fact, Abraham Lincoln being elected as President of the United States, that was literally all over the freedom of slaves. Abraham Lincoln, nobody gave a shit about until he was fighting for slaves' rights. He got into office because of the slaves' rights. Southern states claimed that if they didn't win the person that they wanted to win the election, that if he didn't win, if Abraham Lincoln won instead, then they were just going to leave the Union. That's how important slavery was to them. Now, they had instructions in the Bible on how to treat slaves, and you should look it up. Look up the instructions in the Bible on how you're supposed to treat your slaves. Was that how the Southern people were treating their slaves? No, it was not. But just because it's in the Bible doesn't make it okay. Now, although the intended purpose of many portions of the Constitution were to end slavery eventually, the fact is, at that point in time, they needed to try to get every person in America, if they were going to have their own free and independent country, they had to get everybody in America to fight over a loose affiliation of morals and beliefs. The more generalized they could make it, the more people they could pull under their banner. The more things that they said no to this and no to that and no to the other, the less people they would have had to fight that fight. And yeah, they were some dirty son of a bitches back then too, who lied to their citizens, who lied to their soldiers. And same thing with the British. Lied to their citizens and lied to their soldiers. I tend to believe that if George Washington were alive today to see what was going on, I think he would probably put a pistol in his mouth. The South was heavily reliant on slavery, but they didn't need to be. That's the same thing that brought the Romans down, a reliance on slavery rather than innovation. The Roman rental agreement also played a great part in the downfall of Rome. And for us to adopt that system after the Civil War, just so that we could prevent black people from owning property, so that we could prevent them from having the rights of the Constitution, that's just pathetic. The fact that those laws are still on the books today, they got rid of the Jim Crow laws, didn't they? No, they didn't. The very first Jim Crow laws were anti-homeless laws. Those laws were used to abuse the 13th Amendment to create chain gangs, which were Fritz Sauckel, Adolf Hitler, and Heinrich Himmler's base model when it came to creating the death camps and the forced labor camps. Everything from Gusen II and Dachau to Bergkristall and Auschwitz. After the war, the United States figured out how to monetize that, how to incarcerate the most impoverished people in the nation and the most victimized people in the nation, to lock them up for speaking up so that they can pretend those things didn't happen and make America look like it's a better place than it really is. Here in America, we victimize the victims. That's what we do. as long as there is a victim class, a class of people that everybody is allowed to victimize, well, they'll allow the rest of this shit to go on without revolt. Oh, the cops are messing with you? Take it out on a disabled homeless male. Your congressman won't let you get an abortion? Take it out on a disabled homeless male. Your dad won't stop raping you, and you don't want to get locked up for telling on him? Take it out on a disabled homeless male. Your husband is beating the shit out of you, and he's raping your daughter, and you can't say anything because if you do, you won't be able to make rent. If he gets locked up, you'll end up on the streets, and your daughters will end up in the system. And you got so much hatred and rage because you can't say nothing, you can't do nothing, and your daughters hate you because you are allowing it to happen. Well, you're frustrated, and you should have the right to take it out on somebody, shouldn't you? And God damn it, that homeless person over there, I don't see anything wrong with him, so there must not be anything wrong with him. I can't see his back injuries, so they must not exist. I can't see the physical and sexual abuse that he has gone through in his life, so it must not exist. It's okay for me to go take it out on him. My life sucks. My life sucks as a mother, and I'm not allowed to take it out on the people who I should be able to take it out on. But I can take it out on a disabled homeless man, and nobody will give two shits. If he tries to say anything, they'll arrest him. If he tries to defend himself, then I'll just play victim. I deserve that. I deserve to have someone to take it out on. And all of you do this. All of you. Alexis Hink type TBF, Americans should just be grateful that their country isn't doing too badly by global... Oh, that's right. All Americans should not complain because the top 1% of Americans are rich. Because the top 1% of Americans who are making record profits, well, because that's what global standards are based on, isn't it? Global standards are not based on the reality of the situation. The reality of the situation is that 80% of Americans live underneath the poverty line. The reality of the situation is that over 50% of those, the only thing keeping them afloat, the only thing making it look and appear like they live below or live above the poverty line is the fact that they've got all of their credit cards maxed out. They're living on credit. They haven't even earned that money, but they're borrowing it. There's people like me who don't get to borrow. We never did. I got dropped off at 18, right, fresh out of the system. Hey, guess what, Sean? You're 18. The system doesn't have to take care of you anymore. Congratulations. No driver's license, no ID, no nothing. You're homeless in Chapel, Nebraska with one fucking shoe. Well done, America. And then we got these folks, especially in Europe. My God, you guys are sold this myth of every American being rich. Like, if we're not rich, it's because we choose not to be rich. No, our fucking government rips the fuck out of us. We are paying taxes for services that we are not entitled to. We don't have access to it. We pay the taxes for these things. But then they want you to pay ungodly amounts of money. You should look up how much it costs to have a child in the United States. You should look at how much an ambulance ride is. I've got an $1,800 bill for an ambulance ride. $1,800. That's one of the cheap ones. And I'm expected to pay that. Meanwhile, according to the law, because I was arrested and put in the ambulance, it's Dual County's job to pay that bill. Dual County, Nebraska, that's where Chapel is. Anyway, Alexis Hink typed, I'd much rather be under the poverty line in the U.S. than to be well off in India. You know what? I've never been to India. You ever been to India? You ever been to the United States? Tell you what, there's a couple coal towns I could turn you on to in Tennessee, and you can tell me about that poverty stuff again. We have third world conditions for many people here in the United States. But not only the third world conditions, but we're denied the right to do things that people in third world countries are allowed to do. Like build your own lodging. No, you gotta pay a whole shit ton of fucking money for that. And the amount of money that people want for property, and I get that it ain't cheap in the UK either. You guys are getting fucked as well. Your government don't give two shits about you, and they'll exploit you the same as the United States government exploits us. But this is about my dad and his abuse. About his belief that he could force me to make porno websites to attach his 900 numbers to. That he could attach videos to. That he had this idea of having this swinger kind of chat thingy. I mean, yeah, my dad was real innovative, but if this is what he wanted to do, his ideas were good. He should have done them. He should have learned HTML instead of trying to force me to do it because I'm autistic and he thought I was Rain Man. His ideas are based off of mythology about autism. The same mythology that I am abused over to this day. What my father chose to do, he chose to do. And the head games that he continues to mess with me over, that's not okay. He wants to hide his crimes. Well, no, you don't get to. When I first tried to turn this shit into the cops in Tacoma, Washington in 1996, man, I gotta tell you, being told that I have the same options as that girl who cuts on herself. Either you can stay with your predator or we can lock you up. I'd already been through that in Washington State with my dad once already. I tried telling on my dad and I was locked up. And then he wants to tell me how expensive it was for him to have me locked up and to keep me there locked up. No, that's not okay. You know what? I'll never be allowed to take my father to court for any of the things that he's done. I'll never be allowed to take any of my predators to court for what they've done. I'll never be allowed to take care of myself. Ever. I will never be allowed to defend myself. And then my physical disabilities in addition to that. And then the severe crisis that I am in because I have PTSD, because I am shut down. I literally cannot take care of myself. Being forced to go to a man who has the moral compass. I don't know what he's got as a moral compass. I don't know what he has there. I don't. I've never known him to have one. But he sure knows how to manipulate. He sure knows how to manipulate stupid people. Girls start cutting themselves at 5 times the rate of boys at the age of 15. And these feminist groups will try to pretend like that's because boys aren't being abused. No, it's a lot worse for boys. Boys kill themselves at 5 times the rate of girls starting at the age of 15. Do you know why that is? Boys are told they just need to man up. A boy who admits that he's been sexually abused is demasculated. A boy who admits that a grown man shoved his cock up his ass, yeah, he's for making fun of. He's for teasing. You stay away from that boy, he'll never be a man. And then, of course, with me being so disgusted with sex after my experiences growing up. And my dad thinks that it's okay to force me to do those things. Force me to make porno sites for him. No, I will not. I am not okay with that. Being forced to do that before I was even allowed to work on my homework. How fucked up is that? That is sexual exploitation of a minor, and it is not okay. That is forced labor. That is also not okay. That is part of the sex trade, and no 15-year-old should be forced to be involved in the sex trade, whether they're a boy or a girl. Being forced to try to link up different porno videos that my dad wanted me to link up, to try to learn how to do that stuff to make my dad happy, to try to learn how to make links to different stuff that he had so that he could have his 900 numbers online. No, that's not shit that a fucking 15-year-old wants to learn about when sex has been such a horrible, horrible experience for them. No, my dad made his bed. He can sleep in it. He wants me to go back and remove the parts where it talks about the things that he did. No. No. The more he tries to hide that and the more he tries to cover it up, the more I am going to speak out. The way that victims are treated in the United States is fucking horrible. And the more broke they are, the more horrible they are treated. Anyway, it's good to be rid of you. Thanks for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. And remember, you are your brother's keeper. No victim left behind.